Hey, my name is Jojo. I am currently the ministry associate for high school. I've been serving as the ministry associate over the last year, and this is my story. I grew up attending a Methodist church with my family every Sunday morning. And I remember back in the day, I used to go to Sunday school, VBS. But as I got older, it was more of a way that I was trying to please my mom or fulfill my mom's commands for me, rather than a personal relationship with Jesus. I thought that going to church every Sunday meant that I was going to become a good person, or I was being a good person. So I was following a lot of rules, living a moral life. And even throughout high school, I was a pretty reserved and quiet person who a lot of people respected, but I never went out. I was a little goody two shoes. And so I was always known as the nice guy. Being the nice guy, it kind of set its standard for myself, or a standard for my own life. I would go to school, I'd go to baseball practice, I'd go home, I'd do my homework and go to bed, and then just start it over and again and again and again. And it was something that I had set myself up for in a way to achieve this standard. I was always known as the nice guy. And one day, one of my good friends and I were talking during class or after class one day, and we were talking, I don't even remember what it was about, but it was about morality. And I remember telling him, I said, I'm a good person because I go to church. And he paused in his tracks and said, pretty aggressively, he said, just because you go to church doesn't make you a good person. And that stuck with me for a while, and it still does to this day. My last semester of high school, I was dating a girl, and being the nice guy, you're always expected to be the nice guy. And so I'm dating this girl, and as the summer approached, things went south really fast. And in an act of rebellion towards this girl, I actually decided to go and party a lot. I started drinking, I started smoking weed, I started going out more and more, coming home late, and it just became this cycle of trying to be filled by something that wasn't actually going to fill me. And I was doing that for about 4 years. So it was from 2011 to 2015, trying to be filled by partying, trying to be filled by relationships, trying to be filled by just going out and being someone that I'm not. And I think a theme in my life has been placing my identity in things that actually don't fill me. So gradually, throughout those 4 years, I continued to distance myself from the Lord when I didn't even know who the Lord was. I continued to say, God, I don't want this, but I'm going to go to church on Sunday morning so that I can be refilled, or I can reset from the week that had just passed of partying and smoking and doing whatever. One night, my best friend Rick and I were out partying, and we spent a lot of money on drinks. And just going to let you know, it's not cheap to go out. And so we were out, and at the end of the night, we actually walked back to my truck, kind of confused. And so we got back into my truck, and we just sat there reflecting and trying to process what had just happened that night. And I remember turning to Rick and asking him, is this it? Is this all life has to offer for us? And eventually the conversation went to, let's go to church. Let's start going to church. And so we actually texted one of our friends and said, hey, we know you go to this young adults group. Can we go with you? And she said yes. And so a week later, we're at this young adults group. And when we walk into this place, we're both in shock. There are hundreds of other young adults, Christian young adults, pursuing and desiring to pursue something that we're looking for. But to be honest, what held us there, what kept us there, was that there was a lot of pretty girls. We kept on kind of living this dual lifestyle of, we're going to continue to party, but we're going to use this church, this ministry, as a crutch so that we can put it, in a sense, a label of, hey, he is a great guy who goes to church and goes to parties, but he goes to church. It was using that word, that churchy word, or that ministry, as a crutch so that I would look better in other people's eyes. A few months pass by, and I'm still living this dual lifestyle, this party throughout the week on the weekends and then go to church on Sunday and Sunday night. The day, I actually remember the specific day, it's August 9, 2015. I was invited to play in a city tournament for softball, and I actually didn't want to play. And I told my coworkers, like, hey, like, if you need me, I'll play, but if you guys can find someone, I won't. And they couldn't find anyone, so I obliged and said, okay, whatever. So coworker picks me up, he drives me over. It's at the Huntington Beach Sports Complex, and it's the second play of the game. I'm playing in the outfield. A ball gets hit very shallow, and our shortstop at the time had no range. Sorry, Carlos, but he had no range, and so I'm sprinting in from center field, and I go for the ball. I tuck my right foot in, and I try to go for a sliding catch, but there was actually a pothole right there in the ground, and so my right foot gets stuck in it as I'm sliding. So my right foot gets stuck, I'm sliding, and then all of a sudden my right ankle goes inward, and I remember flopping and being in so much pain and not knowing what just happened. And I remember like the feeling of after I lifted my right leg up, it felt like my ankle was hanging on by a thread. At the time, I was pretty embarrassed by it because if any of you guys know what I love baseball. And so I take a lot of pride in being good at baseball, playing baseball, knowing a lot about baseball. And so it was just kind of a humiliating moment for me. And I remember I didn't even drive to this place, so I had to call my parents to pick me up. And as they're driving me to the hospital, I remember sitting in the back seat, pretty emotional, and I just started crying because I just felt like my life was over. And so eventually we get to the emergency room or urgent care, and I remember I'm sitting in the bed and I'm just panicking. I'm like, what's going to happen? And I'm with my mom. I overhear the doctor. He says, it's fractured. As I'm laying in the hospital bed, I just think, my life is over. And my mom's on my side, and she just says, pray. Just pray, just keep praying. I'm like, in my head, I'm just thinking, I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't know how to pray. I don't know what to do, but I'll just do it. And so the doctor comes in, he gives us the news. And after he leaves, I start praying. And that was actually the first time that I felt God tangibly in my life. And instead of feeling so hopeless in the moment, it was actually the first sign of hope. It wasn't that my life was over, but my life was just beginning. So after the hospital, I end up going back to church. I'm in crutches. My leg is cast up. And someone introduces themselves to me. His name is Tyler. And he starts asking me all these questions. And it was actually one of the first times someone at that church spoke to me. And I had been there for the last probably 5 or 6 months. So it's the first time someone talked to me, someone remembered me, and someone went out of their way to actually get to know me. And from that, it was the start of me wanting to be involved more and me seeing that there's something greater than just pursuing endless things. So from August 2015 to March 2016, I made the greatest decision of my life to surrender my life to Christ, and I was baptized on March 20th, 2016. After baptism, however, it felt like I was still desiring these things, and I felt like once I go under the water, everything's going to change. But that was the complete opposite. Things still continue to stay the same, and I kept asking myself, why am I still living and desiring to live this lifestyle? Why am I placing my identity in this lifestyle? Why am I placing my identity in this relationship? Or even why am I placing my identity in anything else but Jesus? A passage in scripture that stands out and has more so stood out more recently has been in the book of Romans. And so Romans 5 and 6 talk about being justified by faith. But specifically, the passage that stands out the most is Romans 6, 1 through 2. Romans 6, 1 through 2 says, "What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it?" For me, that is a huge question that I continue to ask myself every day. Shall we continue to sin where grace abounds? And Paul's response is, by no means. I think even when I gave my life to Christ, I was still taking advantage of this free grace. But I don't think God calls us to live our old lifestyle or take advantage of this grace. Rather, he invites us into it to live into it so that we don't have to experience the weight of our actual sins. So I love that God continues to pull my heart towards him and continues to pull my heart towards the things that are above. And again, this isn't the end of our life, but rather this is the beginning of a new life with Jesus. And every day, as we read in Scripture, mercies are new. Every day is a new day. Every morning is a new morning. God's mercies are always new. And so every day I'm asking myself, shall I continue to live this lifestyle while God's grace abounds? And the answer is going to be no every time. So after hearing my story, I hope that you guys can use this as a small testament and just a great example for you guys. Is I know a lot of you guys are getting older. You guys are pursuing the same things. You're pursuing sports. You're pursuing relationships. You're looking for your identity. But God is so graceful and he is so merciful. And he doesn't call you to keep searching for things, but rather he is right in front of you. He's there. He's present with you. He calls you to abide in his love. So I want to encourage you guys that wherever you're at, whatever you're pursuing, and whatever you're doing, know that God's grace always abounds more and more than your sin ever will. Thanks for listening, guys. I love you. Have a great day.